Thank you so much, Shige. I feel a little bit happier today, and we are actually reaching to another our final session for today, which is the second panel discussion. All right. So the panel discussion will discuss the benefits and limitations of both online and offline doctors, and how to keep pace with the rise of telemedicine, and how working adults can adapt to both in a way that complements their busy schedules. You will recognize our first guest panelist from his regular column in The Star, which is putting Dr. G on the spot. Dr. George Lee is currently a clinical associate professor of surgery at Monash University and consultant urological surgeon from Gleneagles, Kuala Lumpur. Dr. George Lee was also a consultant urologist in the United Kingdom. Our second guest panelist is the CEO and co-founder of Walnut Wellness. Influenced by her time working as a pharmacist, Sian realized the urgent need to better preventive care. Walnut Wellness aims to bridge the gap and ensure user-centered, outcome-oriented, data-driven preventive care could be accessible and affordable to the people. Our third guest panelist has over 30 years of experience in healthcare. Dr. Rayney Azmi Ali is currently the Chief Executive Officer of KMI Healthcare. Dr. Rayney has a well-decorated background as a healthcare professional, started his career at Prince Henry's Hospital in Melbourne, all the way to being the Regional Medical Coordinator of Columbia Asia Group Hospitals for 6 years prior to joining KMI Healthcare. Last but not least, our panel moderator. He has over 15 years of academic and research experience in Germany, Europe, and Malaysia. Dr. Sian is currently an associate professor and holds the responsibility as the head of department as well as the associate dean for the School of Science and Technology. Are you guys super excited with this panel lineup as I am? If you do, please let us know at the chat box. Before I hand over to Dr. Lau, just a gentle reminder, if you have any question for our panel, please feel free to type in the chat box. Alright, the panel, I think, is getting ready. We'll be right back, so please stay tuned.
Right, good afternoon, and I'm very glad that we have this opportunity to come here and to share what we think about online and offline doctors. It's a bit strange to think about online, offline, because it looks like it's real or fake doctors, that kind of feeling. And without me trying to define it, I would like to ask the three panelists, and what do you imagine as the ultimate online doctor? Something like a superhero, right? So what's your view about ultimate online medical healthcare doctor that we can imagine either in near future or future? Maybe we start with Sian.
Yeah, sure. I think I will share from a different perspective, because a lot of us, when we talk about online doctor, we only talk about the treatment side of things, but I would like to look at it from the wellness side of things. Instead of the sick care, we can even talk about the well care. So we should even take care of people when they have yet fall sick, even when they are well. So people at the community level, they should be able to get access to health coaches, even their community health providers, for example, their pharmacies or even their gym trainer, their dietitians, and they get hold of them just by a click with their mobile phone. So that is what I imagine for the future of healthcare. And when they are sick, then again with a button, with a click in their mobile phone, they'll be able again to get access to a doctor at the primary care. And if it is serious, then they get better referral to the secondary and even the tertiary care as well.
That's good. So we try not to limit doctors as in just medical doctor, but the whole healthcare kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
I agree. I mean, the whole healthcare ecosystem should involve all the healthcare practitioners. Coming back to answering your questions about what constitute a good online healthcare doctor, so what do I imagine in 20 years from today, what would I see? I would imagine there are three segments of what doctors, as myself as a actively practicing doctor, there are three segments that will be important. One segment is a consultation stage. In that consultation stage, it's about making the right diagnosis and yet having that trust and rapport. And then the second part is the investigation stage. I mean, in that basis, all the investigation has to be as accurate as possible and as minimally invasive as possible. And the third phase of that actually is the intervention part. So whatever doctors do to you, and I think we see a lot of progression over the last decade or so in both, in all three segments. So as far as doctors face to face, we're all virtual today. Everybody, even though we're talking about real doctors, fake doctors, right? Okay, we're virtual today. And then in many ways, we're heading to that direction anyway. However, what we probably will need to discuss later on is how much of that is how much of seeing a doctor it's about getting the accurate diagnosis. I think the accurate diagnosis itself is not difficult because any form of repetitive recognition of a symptoms or looking at any sign will be able to address that issues. And then the part where the doctor added to it, which hopefully in the future will be important, will be that compassion, the trust, and then that is a human side of things. Hopefully it will evolve as well.
So I think before I pass the time to Dr. Rayney, at least we don't distinguish online, offline doctors as a real or fake doctor, like me, fake doctor. But a real doctor that no matter you see him face-to-face or her face-to-face or not, you are really dealing with a human that has more than just a repetitive action, but you can feel it's really someone, no matter online or offline. Dr. Rayney, what do you think?
Right, okay. Actually, yes, our topic is online, offline doctors. But my concept of what is in the future for online doctors is actually wider than that. Yeah? Adding to what both our panelists have said, an online doctor would be a component of what is coming up in what I would term as smart healthcare. Now, everyone is going online. And we cannot run from the fact that technology is coming up, is building up, and healthcare has to keep up with that. So it goes beyond. I think Ms. Khor did say about the pharmacy and medication, another component. So the doctor's consultation, another component. KMI Healthcare, we run 4 hospitals, Anajaya, Taman Desa, Kuantan, Perjalanan. So we are trying to get a whole system which includes all this. People are talking about apps, online consultation, ordering medication. So all that will be part of this component, and online doctors will play a very important role in what I would term as smart healthcare.
Yeah, I think smart healthcare is the big word that people are talking about, how you combine something that is currently quite high-tech. Actually, medicine is something still high-tech to give people the care they need, but now enhanced with the latest development. That's where we move towards smart healthcare. I think that part, there's no contradiction. That's a good thing, right? I would like to ask the panelists, why do we need online doctors? In your opinion, what's the need? What's the reason behind the need of online doctors? Maybe we start with Dr. George.
I think there are 2 areas to that. One part is that when we're all evolving digitally, there are many people, for whatever reasons, don't want to see doctors, either out of embarrassment and then out of cost and various reasons, and then all the convenience of their own home. This is an inevitable paradigm shift towards the online contact with a healthcare provider. And I think that side of things, people can eventually either accept that change or not accept it change and then go for traditional way. And I think whether we need it or not, technology has provided us that option, whether you will take it up or not. And in my opinion, I think more and more people will take up the options when they feel more and more comfortable with that. The other part of online, which I mentioned about accuracy, is that sometimes we can assume that the machines can do better works than doctors. Right? For example, there are a lot of pattern recognitions of cancer cells, for example. When you use machines to repeatedly recognize certain things, it will probably recognize better than a human. So that is happening, let's say, for example, X-rays. When the machines recognize X-rays so many times that certain tests, the accuracy is probably better to replace a human. So in that sense, the online doctor will create that accuracy that is crucial for future intervention.
This is interesting. While you talk so much about replacing human, I think what you want to say is not just purely replacing the medical healthcare practitioner. But when it comes to online, that replace can compensate certain things that online doctors can't do. So it's not fully replacing, but the part that online can't deliver can actually have some assistance or complement from technology.
A lot of people like to think that it's synchronized symbiosis. However, we all have this fear. We all watched Terminator 2 before. We know that at one stage, the machine will probably do better job than us. And there's always that fear, no matter what job you're in. It's either a factory person or anybody. We really have to contemplate that potential replacement. So a lot of my colleagues obviously say the right things that you said, we are not replacing. But at the end of the day, if the machine is doing better job than human, there is that chance of your role might be replaced.
I think I'd rather say it's replacing certain tasks that human rather now spend time on other things that are more important.
So on that basis, a lot of doctors in any professions, we need to evolve to synchronize with the technology rather than resist it or fearing the replacement.
Dr. Rayney, what do you think about the need or even...
I definitely agree with Dr. George. Again, my view would be, when we say online doctor, it's not confining ourselves just to be connected online, through the internet or through an app. But an online doctor, like you and me, we have to keep up with the technology. So, exactly as Dr. George said, from X-ray, we have moved to CT scans, we have moved to MRI. Being an online doctor, you have to keep up with that. So in a hospital setting, for example, having a hospital information system. Again, a lot of hospitals have moved towards that direction, but there are a lot of hospitals which are trying to move. There are doctors who are still resistant to keying in medical notes into computers. To me, that's also being part of an online doctor, rather than still sticking to pen and paper. So that is again part of the whole smart healthcare thing. And even from the old days where we had to listen to lung sounds with our ears, it evolved to a stethoscope, right? And now from a stethoscope, now we are looking at things like handheld ultrasound. So as doctors, we had to listen and try to interpret sounds, whether this is a murmur, a funny sound in the heart, and whether this is a systolic murmur, a diastolic murmur, according to the cycle of the heart. But now with the handheld ultrasound, you can actually see what's happening rather than just based on sounds. That is also part of being an online doctor. And I think, as I said, all that would encompass of doctors evolving from offline to online.
So I think to just wrap up this part, is more like online doctors are smart doctors that will use technology to carry out smart healthcare. I think that's a rather good perspective, because it's online, offline tend to give people the feeling, am I connected to the internet? It's a bit too restrictive. But I just suddenly thought of this example is like when I can walk all the time, but if there's a car, I'd rather use the car to get to the destination faster. That hopefully is an analogy why technology is necessary to help us. Will this make offline doctors obsolete? That's something I'm very curious about. Dr. Rayney, can you touch on that?
Okay. To me, definitely no, because medicine actually is a combination of science and art. The science part, technology and computers and all this can take over that part. The art part is where the person comes in. You can look at the whole line of symptoms and teach the computer to interpret the symptoms, but having the human touch will make a lot of difference to decide what diagnosis is it. I can give you an example. Gallstones is very common in women, it's very common in obese people, and the symptoms are very typical of pain on the right side. From personal experience, I had a lot of pain in the abdomen. I thought, it's not gallstones. I'm a male, I'm not fat, I'm not at that right age. But when I went to see my surgeon, he said, you've got gallstones. And he was right. So that's where the art comes in, that's where the human touch comes in. And so offline doctors are definitely still there.
How about doctors who resist the technology that can help them to be better or smarter in that sense? That is the coming back to what we've just said earlier.
View on that, obviously as a doctor, I will give you my view about, being a dinosaur, who's over 50s and then can't really accept that. What's your view about that?
I think coming from a perspective, because we founded a digital health company and we deal with some of the healthcare professionals as well.
It's not easy.
It is not easy, definitely, because I think one thing, the mindset is one thing. They have been used to their way of practices for like ages, in decades, and also in order for them to adapt to a new system, a new processes where they need to get used to all these machines and all that is definitely not easy. And I think because I heard also from other doctors' community as well, I think their concern is also from the regulation perspectives, whether or not they are well protected in that sense if they actually provide their services via online platforms and whatnot. I think that is also one of their main concerns.
Yeah. Well, I beg to differ with what you said. I mean, you said, okay, you've got this pain, and then eventually the doctors make a better judgment. But with technology getting better, one day that symptoms potentially can actually make a human better. And coming back to your comment about doctors resisting, I can tell you, I'm one of those doctors. You want to go paperless? It's like, I don't even know how to switch on a computer. It's like, it's completely difficult for me to accept what it is. But I'm also a professor in Monash University, where I train a vast majority of my students who are brought up in digital era. So, with vast majority of these people are in the acceptance phase from the day they are born, right? With the iPad in their hands and when they are still holding the milk bottles, right? Okay. And then it is something that is almost a second nature. So the new groups of doctors will inevitably find this is just a way of life. So, in a way, answering your questions is that the old doctors may resist the changes or find it difficult to accept the changes. Obviously, COVID-19 changed a lot of things, right? It changed a lot of ways. Many of us never even heard of Zoom before, and suddenly, a 75-year-old physicians will tell you about how he Zoom with their kids, right? Okay. And then so I think, in a way, accepting new technology is inevitable. And then how fast that happens, it sadly took COVID to kind of facilitate this. But in a way, it is not going to make doctors obsolete, but it's going to change the landscape of the whole thing within a decade.
Can I just add, resistance to change is human. That's why part of putting in innovation and new things is always change management. Which is not our topic today. But to summarize what will happen to these doctors, I would like to quote what I learned from my former CEO. What he said was that he will find the well-learned person, well-equipped to face a world which no longer exists. And that's why we have to move.
Well, in a way, it's not just that person either decide to survive or not. The market will decide to help them to survive, because the days I was brought up, I have to go to the the shop lot doctors as a GP, and the shop lot doctors can't survive because to continue to function 24 hours a day, to have their files handwritten, stored in the shop lot, and then have their X-ray machine upstairs, they don't exist anymore. It's because the technology, the market, actually will make them obsolete in many ways. So we're evolving naturally or unnaturally anyway. So I think, in a way, nature will take its course. It's a natural part of the evolution.
I think as long as we also have offline patients, they may still want offline doctors. That's one perspective we have to actually balance. Not all wants that high-tech kind of environment to get their treatment. Some still prefer to hold the doctor's hands when the SOP and COVID is over. It's that human touch that we can't run away, right? So, but I come from technology background that I will also agree you just have to embrace technology one day. And the hope is, of course, the young people are really more receptive or natural about it. And that is how things will just happen, naturally. I want to bring this to the next part, since Dr. Josh, you mentioned about AI, machines being better. I know since last year there are this kind of technology. If you look at online, they talk about deepfake, that you can even put someone's face, talk to you as someone else. You just use AI to change his face. Will one day be actors, getting AI and pretend to be you giving consultation. What do you think about that?
Well, okay. Don't need actors. You can just get the animation, right? Yeah, you can actually do that. I suspect one day the whole image is a perception of how you feel comfortable. So one day, if you just log on 10 years from today, if you want to talk to a woman about issues, then you click on you want a woman doctor. If you want with different accent, Asian accent, you just put on different accent. It's whatever you feel comfortable that make you feel at ease. I think eventually it will be like that. So is that AI? In a way, it's not. It's about perception. But the AI part is how the patterns are being recognized. Let's say, for example, Google has invested so much money in the fight for cancer. If you just control the pattern of, if you just observe the pattern of cellular changes, right? Okay. And then actually intervene ahead of that cellular change. And then that is a concept that we didn't even contemplate before, because previously we were just blocking the cell progression. But now we are anticipating what is that cell progression 10 days from today and actually block it ahead of the time. And that is looking at the pattern recognition. That's AI. And then also a lot of radiologists perhaps are concerned that because in many ways that their job is pattern recognition, just looking at pattern after pattern of images. And one day the technology will recognize that pattern a lot better than human. So in a way, those AIs are the things that will make accuracy, intervention that is so good, and then even pattern recognitions that eventually will create interventions such as the cancer control. And I think obviously that is the bigger picture of what we're talking about, the online medical technology in the future. But the medical provision, as far as consultation, test, and intervention is concerned, 10 years from today, if we do this, 10 years from today, it will be beyond recognition.
I think as we are speaking, technology is also evolving. But what I foresee maybe in the next decade, AI might not, completely replace doctor, but I think AI would make doctors better doctors. Yes. So because when you talk about doctors or even other allied healthcare professionals, we have a lot of tasks in hand when it comes to providing care to the patients, coming from a perspective of history taking or even providing diagnosis and then to come up with a better treatment plan. And AI is good at certain skills. I
agree with that. Therefore, as a doctor myself, the way I look at it is that rather than fearing AI, if it makes me a better doctor, that I will have a better accurate diagnosis,
that's right,
better precise intervention, then I need to know what is available. I need to keep myself updated, and I also need to focus on my strength. Because like you mentioned, the doctor's strength is that human touch.
That's right.
So when all that data is in front of me, I can deliver more precise medicine to patients, then I need to focus on my human touch in order to make it better for the patient.
Yeah, I think strength of AI is more towards their logical thinking and the analytic skills where they are able to, the robots are able to recognize known patterns, old patterns. But humans, we can then assess if there's a new thing coming up. If there's a new data or new sets of data, new issues coming out, then humans have to take place. And I just want to echo what Dr. Rayney and Dr. George has mentioned. AI doesn't have the social skills that we have. And I think a big part of patient care is definitely in maybe motivating them and when picking up all these emotional things where robots cannot pick up.
The art of medicine.
Exactly. Or even to respond emotionally appropriate to the patient, to even motivate them to take up the treatment or whatnot. I think this is the part where AI cannot replace human doctors and even other professionals. Yeah.
So I definitely agree with what they have said, but AI can never replace that human touch. That's one thing. The second thing is you still need a human doctor to teach the AI what to do. So we're still there.
But the challenge is once you taught the system and the system can do it well, you do not need the other doctors to do it anymore.
Yeah, so that we can have doctors to do doctors' job, more
I
human
believe so.
job.
Don't get me wrong. I do hope that it's not even a symbiosis, we're complementing. I was thinking a picture of Batman and Robin, the doctors are fighting crime or the diseases, but you have this AI keep helping you to be more efficient.
So the question, who's Batman and who's Robin?
Doctors are definitely the heroes, and you have the sidekick, right? Assisting, which is equally important. And it's not just AI, there are other people in the whole ecosystem making sure you give the best quality of healthcare to people who needs them, right? So I think let's move on before we fight more now. But if we roughly agree on the AI, I think let's talk about things that you anticipate based on the definition of online doctors that will be a challenge maybe in the next 5-10 years. It will stop it from becoming reality in nearest future. Anything you would like to share?
I mean, earlier on, we touched on issues of legality and confidentiality. I think it's just a matter of different jurisdictions agreed on what is legal and what's not. I think 2-3 things that I worry about. Of course, one day I probably have to accept my patient wanting to have a WhatsApp consultations, FaceTime consultation with me. For example, I have many patients from Indonesia who can't come over because of border closure. And then when I talk on the phone, they said, "Doc, do you mind just do a FaceTime?" That is an online consultation. I have several concerns. Number one is that whatever communications I have with that patient, in a way, confidentiality, right? Okay, how safe is the line? And then also how much of that is potentially can be leaked. And then because it's very sensitive information about cancer care, sexual health, anything that it's supposed to be guaranteed that confidentiality. And also how safe is that data if it's recorded, how will it be used outside, for that autonomy of that person? How much of that am I protected of me giving a consultation across border, right? Okay, and I falling under their jurisdiction, my jurisdiction, and how much of that is protected by my medical protection indemnity? And then all these are question marks that I can't answer because I did it out of good gesture. However, if that goodwill actually land me in hot water, so be it, because I felt that I did it with good intent. However, I think it's a matter of time that the indemnity, the insurance, the healthcare providers, the regulatory bodies have to come up and say how much of that they will protect the patients and how much of that will protect the doctors. And of course, on your side, you'll work hard to make sure that the patient confidentiality and the safety of that line is ensured. Because initially when Zoom came on, right, everyone was complaining that it's all open access to people discussing private matters. But eventually that clamped down. So there will be a lot of fine-tuning, but those are my concerns about legality and indemnity.
I think a lot of times regulation will follow suit what the market has progressed. So it may take some time for regulations
or follow a lawsuit. Right. Okay. Right. It may take a lawsuit to determine the law, right?
I think if you observe since probably 2000 when internet and technology became mainstream, I'll put it that way, law is constantly chasing after it. I think it's the nature of how technology really changed that fast that I'm not thinking they purposely delayed. It's just that there are so many new things we have to reconsider. I think even business models must adapt very quickly, integrating, complementing all factors, right? I think from your point of view, what do you think about this question, challenges that you foresee?
Well, if you're talking about the next 5 to 10 years, my take on this is the biggest challenge will still be change management. Even like we are trying to move from on-site servers to cloud servers. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of resistance of people trying to accept, is this safe? Is my data safe? And from the traditional people, there's still a lot of resistance. I want the server on-site. I have the data there. I have full control, So even in that aspect, going from a on-site server to cloud-based, there's a lot of resistance there. And I think that will be the biggest challenge in the next at least 5 years, managing that change for people to move to the Internet of Things, to move to online doctors and all that. Then the second part would be the technology itself. We have looked at a few systems and all that, and there's always something that still can be improved. Yes. So that technology has to keep up as well within the next 5 to 10 years.
I'm going to ask you a question. Like, let's say, we're in the healthcare side, we're cutting that line, you're on the other side. What challenges or barriers do you think you may potentially face as a consumer, as a, healthcare user, if you were to have a online consultation and online intervention with your clinicians?
I will say I can't represent the general public because I had my kind of a short time with a telemedicine project that we advocate how technology does close the gap. But I would agree the part about trust. I think the perception of how safe it is more important than in actual fact, is it really safe? Because I dislike saying that COVID did push this trust closer to how it can be because we have to trust all this online platform. And it's the same thing with AI. It's not just doctors may find it difficult to trust AI models. Even patients may be skeptical because it's no longer the doctor that you trust that made a decision, I have a cancer. That kind of transition will take time to it's not just awareness, it's about partly legal framework and partly the reliability of the technology. And I still think it comes back to the healthcare professionals to really advocate it when we also manage to convince you how well it works.
Do you think overall people feel comfortable? Kind of like if you feel like you want to discuss your, like you said, preventive medicine. If one day I wake up and say, as a 50-year-old man, I want to know what sort of things I need to do to keep myself healthy. And then I looked online and looked at Mayo's Clinic and decided that I'm going to log on to talk to Dr. XYZ in Mayo's Clinic and talk about it. Do you think people are comfortable to do that so that they can have that choice of going for the best person or whoever they wish online? Do you think people feel comfortable with that?
Now I become a panelist, right? I can speak as a consumer. I don't know, but for me, I agree with Dr. Rayney. Doctors are people that I start to build that relationship and trust. So if a doctor moves, I will follow. I think that's my generation. But something we all agree, the new generation may treat doctors just like, how they switch from brand A to brand B. Many other factors that may come. But I feel when it comes to my well-being and my life, someone that I can trust, that I grow up together, may not change so fast. I do not know. So
I would say yes, they would accept it because even now they have started moving in that direction. Yeah, for example, we talk about Dr. Google. They consult Dr. Google and make their own judgments and, have their own treatment plan. But being a doctor, even though now I'm holding the position as CEO, I still get friends and relatives sending me WhatsApp, just telling me about their symptoms and asking for an opinion. To me, that's also part of being online. So people are already moving towards that. They're using the tool, but they still seek the doctors that they trust.
But they ask you because they trust you, right?
Yes,
that's my point.
Yes.
I wouldn't ask any random doctor, no matter what qualification, because I need to know the doctor first.
Right.
And another part is I will want to know who he is attached to. That hospital, right, that entity also give me trust. So there's a lot of trust when I go to a doctor. And I think even second opinion is going to another trusted party. I think healthcare will continue that way, right? What do you think?
I think potentially that can be digitized as well, because I think from the patient perspective, a lot of times when we will ask someone, who's the best gynae in town, right? Who's the best peds in town? We'll get a referral from someone else. So if, let's say, that can also be digitized, we can have like an open review from the patients of that doctor in that whole, list of doctors, like what Dr. Joshua mentioned. Then I can go online, and if I have that sort of problems, and this is a list of doctors with all the reviews and the ratings there, I
dare not even look at my own review because I was told by patients that, your review is not bad. I was like, review? I didn't even realize that. I know now I'm like restaurant. I have read a rating, right? Okay, it is. You're absolutely right. It's word of mouth, and then also these rating that generates your trustworthiness. However, we must admit sometimes these sort of decisions are emotional, right? Okay, because we all have our relatives who ask neighbors about, who is the best person, and then eventually go for like tukang urut somewhere else and that sort of things, right? And it's like these sort of decisions sometimes is very personal, very emotional. It's difficult to quantify how you eventually derive that treatment-seeking behavior. But again, coming back to AI, and then they are analyzing how people make decisions like that, right? Okay, how do they analyze that? When you look at certain doctors, you derive that trust. And then so, I mean, we all have heard of how data is being used and manipulated, right? Okay, and in fact, if you look at how people make decisions about how to see doctors, a lot of that can be analyzed and find out the treatment-seeking behavior.
I think before we go into the part that people can mistrust, we skip that part because that's where the legal part must come in. I think with a good and evolving, progressive legal framework, at least trust is built on the right foundation. I would like to touch a little bit on this part about legal, especially in your example. How should the legal framework be designed so that online consultation, smart healthcare can further grow without restriction?
I think it's only one word: accountability, right? Because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, any intervention, either it's consultation, making a decisions on the treatment or test or whatever it is, everything in healthcare carries some degree of risk, right? Okay. So whatever adversity that you incurred as following that, you need to know that someone can be accountable. And so whatever jurisdiction, whatever legal framework, it has to be evolve around that word of accountability. So if you're in an online virtual world that the doctor that you went for actually eventually will be disappeared and nothing accountable. Let's say if I worry about a lump in my hand and then I took a picture, AI or whatever comes out with a diagnosis that this is a mole and it turned out to be a cancer. So someone somewhere needs to be accountable because that decision was made on my behalf on the trust that I made to visit this virtual doctor. And I think any legal framework, any jurisdictions, any organization or governing body has to work around that word accountability.
I definitely agree with that. Just to add on to that accountability and the legal framework must look at both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It must protect the doctor and also protect the patient. So on the patient side, they must understand that it does not replace a live consultation. Sometimes it doesn't even replace a live treatment. Say, for example, surgery. Surgery, you definitely have to be live. You can't have an online consultation surgery.
Robot does the surgery.
And then you still need to come to the hospital.
You can actually have a patient in Malaysia and then all line up and then the doctor is in US and operate on you.
Right.
What if one day we can order a metal box that I just sleep there and I get operated remotely? Online smart healthcare.
That was already a technology has been around for 10 years.
But still you're talking about that's remote consultation, but it's still by a live person. So that the legality has to look at both aspects. Protect the doctor and protect the patient.
I think the protection is important because ultimately why the trust is because I trust my life on the medical system, the people involved, and my well-being, right?
I think the other part is the surveillance of it, especially the data privacy. Who owns the data? Is it the doctor? Is it the healthcare center? Or is it the patient? Ultimately, I think the patient should have the access to the data and should have the say to what the doctors or the medical center would do to their data, because it can be used for many other things, with your healthcare data and all that.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, amalgamating both the discussions about this whole idea of data protecting both parties, and I think that's truly important, is that at the end, if one organization is trustworthy, and then let's say, for example, we have an associations of cancer care for certain organizations and built up that reputations and constantly use the data to audit themselves so that they have robust data to show their performance, and then also assurance that there's accountability of anything, and then also basically makes everything as transparent as possible. I think in the future I will feel comfortable to go to something that has that accountability across all borders, because I know that accountability and trust is there, and also that data is constantly being used for good purpose, and also the doctors themselves are protected because, at the end of the day, everything is recorded. So it's a matter of not just the patients are protected, doctors are protected too.
So it's also making sure that there are certain level of transparency and also openness, right, to the whole process and the technology.
Yeah, for example, the consent for, let's say, an operations. If the data already show that the certain operation had X percentage of complication, and then the data is being used for audit purposes, and highlight that. And when the patients go for that and have wrong expectation, but that is protecting the doctor because it's all transparent, saying that X operation has 20% complication rate, but the patients actually after consultation decide to do that, and then it's protecting both parties, which is what is the real doctor, the real life doctor is happening now, because you go to a reputable hospital, you go to a reputable doctor, and you know that whatever happens next, both the doctors and the patients are protected because it's all documented and it's all accountable.
So I think coming from this point, we are saying at least the framework should extend what is already existing, which is working, so that even the online, the use of technology, and even the inclusion of AI will not change the nature of how things have been protecting both doctors or the healthcare operator and also the patients. I think that's fair and very important. I want to just come to this question because we are nearing the end. We all know this year is the COVID year. It impacted a lot of things. Will actually COVID-19 and the whole thing moving online speed up the acceptance, the progress, and development of online doctors or online smart healthcare?
Yeah, well, there's this joke going around. Who's the best change maker that speed up the whole digitalization? A, CEO, B, CTO, C, COVID-19. And guess what? The answer is COVID-19 because it has drive digitalization across board in all industry. And from our observation, we can see that COVID-19 has also drive a lot of changes when it comes to digital health adoption from the patient perspective. Online consultation, I think, is increasing high up in a lot of platforms. And also we see a lot of medical centers as well starting to adopt telemedicine software and whatnot. So I think it is a good thing. After COVID-19, will it come back to the same old norm where people still want to go traditional way? I think maybe we will go 5 steps forward and maybe 3 steps backward a bit, but we will still be 1-2 steps ahead from the last time where we were. Yep.
Rayney, what do you think?
Yes, definitely COVID-19 has made an impact. As I was mentioning, we are looking at smart healthcare, but definitely it has been accelerated because we had to start thinking of solutions during the MCO. So we can't wait like we are at smart healthcare. No, we had to do something during the MCO, and so it really sped things up. Not only in terms of healthcare, but in terms of the whole way we run healthcare and the business itself, the hospital itself. We have to rethink and we have to come up with new ideas and innovations of how to handle this. So yes, COVID-19 is a blessing in disguise, and it's really made us think in many ways.
Enforce the change management.
Yes, that's right.
Without much
I'll tell you 2 things that COVID-19 taught me. Number 1, it's Zoom. Number 2 is Grab. Right? Okay. Before that, who cares about online? You want to talk to me, you talk to me like that, right? Okay. And then number 2 is that Grab food. You never thought about it, right? Obviously, everything is at the convenience of that. It also incorporated into my practice because when the patients outside who cannot come to see me, even within different states from Pahang, and then when they say Zoom, I say, oh, why not? Let's talk to each other on Zoom. I have to accept that, right? Because they can't physically come and see me. I have the duty to make sure that they are looked after. When things don't work out well, I said, Doc, I need the medication. I said, don't worry, the Grab will deliver it to you. So, in a way, I changed the practice for myself that, I suddenly have to accept and embrace a lot of apps that I didn't even understand before. Suddenly I realized that there's a different world that I quite enjoy. And on the other hand, that world has to be incorporated into my practice as well. And so even for dinosaur like me, I still find that it was a bit of a barrier, but it was not as painful as I thought.
One part we can be grateful is, luckily, there are some technology that we can quickly use. I don't even use the word adapt. It's ready. It's not perfect, but then allow us to continue operating in every single industry. Imagine without all this technology, we still have to dial the phone that you have to dial 20 times
You remember?
Yeah, I am that old. No, but the whole thing is now, what impression does it leave? I still like the term new norm because it helps us to prepare ahead, that we just have to remain progressive, right? Competitive may not be the right word, but we must move on. And I think that's the part. Online doctor, I just kind of conclude a little bit. What we've discussed is still a very positive future where technology should be embraced, that we can now serve more people, also help them, especially during times of crisis like now, that people who needs consultation, Zoom, Grab will actually do the job. And more importantly, that prepares ahead of giving us a taste of how that future can be like. And of course, we will not get it perfect the first time, but I think we are getting better every round. And that gives us lots of hope. Yeah, I think that is the mini conclusion I have, and I think it's about time we ask I think there will be questions from audience. Maybe we can open up the floor. Yeah, so first question is from Ka-sang, saying that what is in place with online doctors to ensure privacy, and even things like medical records, so that all this information of patients is protected. Maybe Dr. Rayney, let's start first. IT.
I think at the moment we already have the PDPA in place. That itself is also covering the data protection side of things, just to answer this question.
Just to add, being on the practicing side, that's one of our big questions. Can we protect our patients' data? So of course, being on the IT side, they always assure us that they have all these firewalls and encryption and all that. And actually, if you look at it, most of the breach of data at the moment is by internal people. People who are actually having access to the data. Or is by people who actually design the system but are working on the outside. So to me, what I've seen is the protection of data has been good. And the breach is always something that went wrong. Not with the system, but with other things.
Are you suggesting that no matter how well we plan, there's always a way if you want to?
Yes.
There's a will, there's a way. Is
Yes.
it?
Well, I am glad you said that. It's because I think to answer that question, Kasang's answer should be, in order to protect that, right, okay, then we need to see the enforcement. So what sort of punitive punishment does people have? I mean, we've all heard of data that, 20,000, 30,000 of consumers' data is just lost, right? And then it's all in the open credit card and that sort of thing. What repercussion did it have? Did anyone get punished? Did anyone go to court? Did anyone get fined? We don't get to hear about that. When people are truly punished for that, then you will build triple firewall to make sure you don't get punished. So I think it's easy for you to say, or it's easy for anyone to say that, it's always penetrable. But if it's penetrable, then it's not safe. Then if it's not safe, then you need to do your utmost for someone like Kaseng to know that whatever happened, if somebody cannot protect my data, you will be accountable for that. And then I think the authority and government really need to come out with really severe punishment. Like, for example, this happened to British Airways, information get leaked, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of punishment, and then, pounds of punishment. But in Malaysia, I think we need to see enforcement of that.
To come to this point, I just want to add a little bit. It's slightly more complex than that. Partly, you look at the case of Sing Health 2 years ago, I think, or last year. It's not just as simple as people can break in and steal the data. When it comes to privacy, the challenge is you are a walking target. People know where the money is, and the worst thing that makes this worry real is because you really don't know who. Those people don't show face at all. I think, but to put things together while the worries are there, I think there's always best effort, right? How many alarms that you set up before someone, managed to get in. And I think that is within the legal framework, the IT system, plus good practices. I like the part where you say hospital must make sure the mechanisms does give a certain, level of security. Yeah, I think that's the best effort what everyone can put together.
At the moment, it's still very much depending on the provider themselves to make the effort to protect the patient's data. I think moving forward, perhaps the regulation can also keep up to that, where it requires certain standards of protection, maybe the bank standard of security system protection for healthcare data. Yep.
Yep. So let's move to the second question from Noru. She says, or she asks, offline doctors offer human touch. I don't think online doctors can give the similar comfort or the experience.
Well, I agree with that, Nero. I just kind of look at myself answering that question. One day, if I have the diagnosis of cancer, do I prefer to be told by an online virtual doctor that I'm sorry, your test result came out to be cancer? So under that circumstance, I feel like there is nothing, no matter how good the AI, the virtual reality is, it's going to replace someone sitting in front of me telling me that bad news. So on that basis, I don't wish this on anyone, but I think that human touch is just something that will make doctors never obsolete. However, it is something that doctors need to enhance on their quality, because this is the quality we have because we're human.
Yes. Just to add on that, I would want my doctors and the future doctors who come to be a hybrid, actually, offline and online. So we can use the tools, the online tools, which will make us better doctors, but we still need that offline touch where we get personalized human touch. So I would say a hybrid doctor would be the best.
I have a colleague at Sunway University that we work on remote touch. It's called haptics. So that when you put on the glove, someone is squeezing your arm and say, it's okay, I'm taking care of you. That may solve the problem of Noru. That could be the future too, right? So third question, Andy asks, coming back to as a working adult in the current era where we are very busy or held down with work, how do we go about getting medical consultation? So what would be the best solution? I think that's related to will online actually solve a busy life, a city life kind of a situation.
Yeah, I think definitely online solutions will bring convenience to the patients. I think a lot of times it's not just the doctors is there, but whether or not we are accessible to them, whether or not our own time or even the places that we are allow us to do so. So definitely I would say online consultation is a way to go. But then again, if you are unwell, and maybe it's time for you to stop being busy as well, and take time to visit the doctor for a consultation, right?
Yeah. I mean, to say that when you're too busy to go to the doctors, then the doctors come to you, right? Effectively, this is the case. At the end, I'm going to highlight something about men's health, right? Okay. The disparity between men's and women's life expectancy is phenomenal. It's at least 5 years. Men die younger. And one of the key reasons is that men always delay their treatment, their consultation. And when you ask men why do they, been peeing blood for, 3 months and then they decide only to come and see doctors 6 months later, and they always say it's work. Right? Okay. So it's not just work. It's embarrassment, it's difficult, it's barriers, it's fear, it's a lot of things. So the online technically can solve a lot of those fear, those barriers that to go and see doctors. So I agree, for certain group of people, convenience is important. But when things started to become consolidated, I believe it can save life.
Just to add that, then I'll pass the time. What if the consultation in those cases are online, but still do not lose the human touch as you are talking to a real person, but there's a certain level of anonymity that I feel comfortable sharing without me revealing who I am? Would that help the situation?
Well, in a way, that happens to mental health patients. Someone's suicidal, right, and then go online or go to telephone line for befrienders, and then just talking to somebody, and then it's anonymity. But yet you get that comfort, and it saves lives. So what difference is that online, offline? It's a healthcare provision for somebody who is desperate need, and then whose life is at the blink of losing the life.
With a new business model, we must talk after this. Rayney, what do you think about this question?
I'll go back to that term that I use of hybrid doctors. Online consultation definitely has a place, but to me it's either step 1 or step 1 and 2. Where step 3 and step 4, sometimes you will still have to go to see the doctor. So step 1 is important when it's online, because sometimes all the patient wants is just to allay their fears. I have this lump. Is it cancer or not? Cancer or not? So is the fear, is being busy at work. All they need is just an opinion. What should I do? So to me, it's still a step one. And we can give that opinion, but eventually, if we say you need to go to step 2, you still have to go to step 2, no matter how busy you are.
I think that's optimizing the system that you can use maybe technology to solve the first line, the level 1 issues, or when it escalates to more serious cases, that's where the offline doctor will come in, because that's where you get the appropriate treatment. I think that's really good. Let's move to the next question. Song asks, has either Dr. Rayney or Dr. George used an online platform to see patient? We just about Zoom? Yeah.
Well, I use Zoom. I use WhatsApp as a online kind of like a virtual.
So I think the question is about, do you find it effective doing it online compared to the offline experience? I think that would be,
Obviously, to discuss the issues, I mean, these patients couldn't come to see me. And then I felt comfortable talking to them. And then these are patients I know from scratch. I mean, from a while ago. So it's a matter of their notes in front of me. I talk to them, and then so I feel comfortable with that. But for a new patients I've not met before, and also in a medium that I don't feel comfortable, I think I will have some resistance. For example, if let's say there is a apps that actually will do the same thing as whatever that it's promised, then I find that I will find it difficult. But I can see, like we talk about the whole COVID situation, I see insurance company has now got, I know you can't go to see doctors, but you don't want to name insurance for the purpose of their advertising. But if you go down billboard, they say that we will have online doctors readily talking to you. And these are qualified doctors. So in a way, many people are already using the medium.
It's a paradigm shift. Now we may still find it, but people are accepting it. But if this goes on for another year due to the whole situation, maybe it becomes the new norm again.
Yes. I'd also like to add that during the COVID-19, the Ministry of Health came up with guidelines of online consultation. So one of the things they did put there is present patients that we have treated, so that we know their history, we know their background. So that was the guidelines during the COVID. So patients that we have not seen are still encouraged to come in. So if you ask whether it has been effective, for me personally, yes. As I mentioned just now, I'm still getting consultations online, but it's mainly from friends and relatives who I have seen, who I know, and I can advise them appropriately. And sometimes my advice is, go to the nearest hospital.
So it's still a kind of human touch and trust, maybe. Good. I'll move to the next question from Ravin asking, maybe it's more like doctors, do they treat patients or illnesses? And would it be better online or offline? I think we did discuss a bit more just now. But this is a nice question about offline. Does it mean rural area will also benefit from better healthcare? What do you think about this?
I think definitely it will help, because I think there are some applications where in other countries in India where they have these rural doctors, and then they can use their facilities in a community area, and then they can refer to a specialist doctor in the city centers, because not every rural area will have the specialist doctor, when it comes to the secondary and tertiary care. So definitely, I think the whole online healthcare paradigm shift will definitely help the rural areas. But then again, another consideration is the infrastructure. So perhaps not every B40s who lives at the rural area would have an access to a smartphone, or even if they have a smartphone, they might not have the internet line. So perhaps the way to resolve this is to have set up an infrastructure for every community in order to access a better healthcare.
I'll highlight an award-winning project about rural healthcare. Basically, in Sarawak and Sabah, there are many patients who eat the rempah, and then suddenly they develop oral cancer. So in order to find out whether they get oral cancer or not, used to get oral surgeons to go to different parts. But now, with their smartphone, they take the pictures, and the pictures recognized, and then only the ones who have suspected oral cancer actually get shifted to the bigger towns so that they can see. So this is a really award-winning projects that actually transform the oral cancer treatment. So I think in a way, simple things like that, it's just a handphone taking the pictures, already can recognize, and then that eliminate the doctors traveling to different part of the rural part. And I also like Ravin's question about saying online doctors treating patients or illness, right? What we were talking about earlier on was treating the illness, the pathology, but actually treating the patients as a whole, it needs a human, right?
Yes, I would agree with that. The principles that are held by true dedicated doctors, like Dr. George and myself, never treat the symptom, always treat the patient. Never treat the illness, always treat the patient. So our focus is always the patient as a whole. And that's, I think, that's the way we look at it.
That's a good point, right?
That's the well-being. It's not just about getting rid of the illness. It's how is this person, right, recovering.
Treating the person in totality.
In totality, yeah. So it's a journey that you accompany. All right, let's go to the next question where I can't see the name. But let me read the question first. Can an online doctor, right, who sees the patient remotely achieve a definitive diagnosis without getting the patient to come to the hospital? Yeah. So what do you think?
I think doing tests like blood tests and all those things, there's always remote services where people can come to your doorsteps to do all those things. But perhaps, as what Dr. Rayney has mentioned also, there are different steps. So let's say if you need to go to the further steps where you need a CT scan and MRI, definitely you would need to come to a hospital. So I would say definitely an online doctor wouldn't replace the whole patient and doctor relationship, but it will definitely facilitate the whole healthcare services moving forward. Yep.
I think it has to do with how accessible are certain equipment or technology to the so-called remote patient, right?
But these days, many patients turn up to clinics with their blood tests already. Yeah, and then so if the test is an issue, sometimes the tests are already there, and then so that bypass a lot of things. And then so that's kind of interesting finding. So how will this whole landscape of tests and intervention later on in 10 years from today, it's actually will be interesting to observe.
Yeah, I think we have covered many interesting topics, and I would like to thank the panelists. I just have a shameless plug that 10 years ago I was working on telemedicine. I said that earlier, that we actually said, can we monitor the stuff? Because what you said, patients coming with the information is exactly what we tried 10 years ago in the research project, where we have technology to monitor. And today, many people do have Fitbit, different technologies they wear, and they collect data as they go. I think Apple Watch is doing that. So it is possible that you can get this information when they come to the doctors, no matter online or offline. And I truly believe in this vision that the first level, we could optimize without removing any of the impact on the patients. And that makes the whole healthcare smarter. And I think that's where the technology does not replace. I think that's still important thing, we all agree, but it will really enhance and complement the service. But more importantly, I think every one of us as human, we would love to still maintain the human touch. I think, especially healthcare, is really about two-person coming, solving life's problem. Removing human from the equation is something we probably can't imagine today. 50 years down the road, we wouldn't know. But we hope that human touch is still important in the whole holistic, right? You mentioned that on so-called the road of healthcare or even recovery. Yeah, with that, I'd like to thank the panelists for your sharing. Insightful. Yeah, makes me feel a bit more like a doctor now. But it's very exciting to see how technology, together with the whole development, is giving us more hope than feeling maybe worried about the future. And I think that's the direction we want to move forward. So again, thank you, all three of you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
for tuning in.
Thank you to Star Media for inviting us, and thank you to panel here. And I think earlier they did talk about the strawberry generation. I think here we agree that we are somewhere in between strawberry and durian.
All right, thank you very much.